Welcome back to the Ticket Manager All Access interview series. My name is Max Campodelorto, and in today's episode, we're going to take a look back on 2024 to explore the most significant trends in the sports business industry. In year 4 of our podcast, we had the pleasure of hosting leaders from brands like Nationwide, Deloitte, BMO, and more, who all gave their takes on the trends and challenges that are shaping the sports business world today. This episode is only going to scratch the surface of what our guests had to offer, so if you missed any of our previous podcasts, please go back and check them out. 2024 was the year of inclusivity, with brands taking a hard look at how their sponsorships help to achieve their purpose-driven goals. From the rise of women's sports to the Caitlin Clark effect and sponsorship intentionality, our first 4 guests are going to take a deep dive into the importance of inclusion.
I think those extra eyeballs are fantastic for the game at a wonderful time. For me, it's fantastic to see, the Asia Wilsons, the Breanna Stewarts, the Jewel Lloyds, the, Kelsey Plums, Chelsea Grays, Jackie Youngs be able to be seen by more people now.
Finally.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the more exposure, the better, because you are truly seeing how great this game is and you're seeing it in its best. Right. I mean, obviously it's been 28 years in existence, but now is the best basketball that's been played. And it's absolutely fantastic on the court. And I'm so overjoyed that more people are able to see it because now more eyeballs are being brought to it. Now, when it comes to capitalize on that from a revenue perspective, I think for us, we've done a great job from a ticketing side of things. It really just more fortified what we are doing on that side of the house. From a partnership standpoint, it really just adds value to the conversations we're already currently having and the ones that the partners that we already currently have at the same time. We've had a couple of partners that jumped on board early when I came on board here at the Aces. And since we've had additional staff, they came on, whether it was last year or before this year started, and they're really seeing the effects and the aftermath of all of the, viewership numbers that have come to be. And they overjoyed from that perspective. And that's really how you continue to grow from a partnership side of things, is really adding on is from those partners talking about it and those partners being about it and just kind of seeing what the change can be from somebody else and kind of using as an example for others that we have conversations with.
Yeah, the explosion of women's sports has been remarkable. You see, with the Caitlin Clark effect the last couple of weeks in the Final Four. And, we're proud to have been, ahead of that curve, we think, 4 or 5 years ago as we entered into the National Women's Soccer League. Relatively young league, but we've seen incredible growth, both from a team standpoint. They've gone from 10 teams. I think they've announced their 15th and soon to be 16th team that will join that league. They just signed a huge new media deal with Scripps Ion, Amazon, Paramount, and ESPN that's going to almost double the amount of games that are out there to be consumed. Going into it, we knew this fan base was very avid, excited, socially and digitally active, and it allowed us to really broaden our reach to a new audience. And really excited what we've seen, the first 3 years and what we're going to see hopefully the next 4 and this growth trajectory going even further. We've built a community impact platform, getting back to the community philanthropic element and that connection. We've done a version of that within this league that we're actually going to come out here in a couple of months with a new rebrand and connect some other elements to that, which are pretty exciting that we'll have coming in the coming weeks and months. But it's an opportunity for us to, from a media standpoint, we're growing our presence. We're doing more with the teams, and we have 14 different ambassadors that we work with from a player standpoint that have been fantastic, that we refresh every year and kind of help them tell their story. We've even built an internship program that we do after the season to bring 4 to 6 women into Columbus and see what working at a Fortune 100 company looks like. So as a sponsor, we always want to do more than just hang a banner, put the logo on signage. We really want to be integrated into the sport, help it grow, and do what we can to enhance the experience for the fans.
I really subscribe to the thought that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that when you look at the demographics, where they're headed in the U.S., and even all the studies that have been done around how a more inclusive approach to business drives outcomes, I continue to be surprised that there's such concern and and people that are against it. But that aside, I think the role of a marketer is to kind of skate where the puck is going, to ensure a brand stays relevant. And in my mind, when you don't take on your sponsorship portfolio and your sponsorship property through a DEI lens, you kind of risk losing a lot of your audience. And you really need to look at that from a messaging standpoint, a creative standpoint, a media perspective, and ensure that the communication for whatever property you have takes those into consideration. I also believe that when you look internal to what's happening inside your company, are you looking at it from a supply chain perspective? Who's in front of the camera? Who's behind the camera? Also, in terms of talent, are you making the conversation and all the planning that you have about activating your property? Is there a diverse set of folks at the table? Because when you don't have that, you risk your communication could be off target. And when you spend this type of money, you just want to make sure you get the full exposure and the full benefit and ROI that happens. And I just don't know any property where some of the viewers, the spectators, and the audience for a property, they all have a different take. You take something like the NFL, what a Hispanic consumer may resonate with them may be very different than a woman or an African American. And so you just, I think, have to think about that as you activate.
For us, it starts with the brand. The brand has to really understand what it is, what it stands for, and its role and benefit in society. And so, like, to do anything purposeful, it has to be authentic. And so you can't, and we've seen it, right? We've seen it happen. You and I could both point at examples where somebody did try to draft off of something else purposeful going on in the world or a charity or something else like that. And I think consumers are savvier than ever today and expecting to understand the ideals and the values of why those brands are associated, and even why properties or causes are allowing those brands to partner with them if it's coming from an inauthentic place. And so, I think it starts with, understanding what your brand DNA is, and as well as then understanding your purpose, that then translates into how you show up, right? So we talk about, activation. Are you adding value to the experience, or are you becoming a distraction away from the experience? And so there are ways to do purpose work in a way that is meaningful to consumers and what they're interested in, but also to be additive to experience. And that's what I've seen probably change the most. There's a receptivity from fans now that sport in particular, but partnerships in general, can add to the fabric of society while still being fun, while still being monetized. And all those things can be true. And real magic happens when those things start to overlap. And so again, like to use a real world example, everybody long overdue now wants to talk about women's sports. We've been in the space, have been driving investment, having conversations with our clients for years. And a lot of it was about not just showing up because it was a cause or the right thing to do, but what's the right place for those respected brands to make an impact in their business.
You can't truly cover 2024 without highlighting the premier event of the year, the 2024 Paris Summer Games. Our next two guests highlighted the excitement that was drummed up among sponsors and attendees, and highlighted how a massive brand is activating their Olympic sponsorships.
First and foremost, there's so much excitement for Paris because whether you were a brand or a sponsor or corporate entertainment, you missed out on Tokyo. And Tokyo was meant to be this massive party and celebration that so many people were excited to do. Same thing with Beijing, right, during the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of, I think we've used the term in the industry, pent up demand, and but I think really with Paris, we're really seeing a lot of that. And so I think more brands, even if they're not sponsors, are taking groups of people over there because it's something that a lot of people want to do because they've missed out on those opportunities. I think beyond that, there's some very unique things about Paris. We're talking about an opening ceremony that is not going to be in a stadium, right? It's going to be going along the Seine River And we're going to see over 100 boats floating by with the athletes there, and for the first time have a few 100,000 people that can experience that, right? It's not just a stadium of 50 or 60 or 70,000 people. You have that, and then there's some really, really iconic venues that, it's kind of a first time that you get to experience that. And that's one of my favorite things to do, as well as see these iconic venues, right? Go see equestrian out at Versailles Palace, right? You can, watch fencing or taekwondo in the Grand Palace, and of course, beach volleyball right there in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower. These are very unique, kind of iconic experience in a great city like Paris. So I think there's a lot of excitement, and we're seeing a lot of that development. I think some of the other things around the city that we're seeing too is there's a lot more sponsorship opportunities. I think we'll talk about that with some of the other topics we have today.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate, as you mentioned in my title. My role is both at the U.S. level and the global level. So I have some amazing stories to tell. If you think about what unfolded this summer, was the IOC and Paris pulled off an amazing Olympic experience.
Indeed.
We were privileged to be part of that, and we have incredible stories about the work that we're doing for the IOC as we think about them executing the games over the next. We have what we call a partnership with purpose commitment that we've made for 10 years. The longevity of that commitment is very important to us. But the storytelling, when you think about, when they went out and looked for the partner that they wanted to work with to deliver on some of their most critical business issues, the ability to talk about the fact that, with half the world watching, they chose Deloitte to be the partner to deliver those things that were required to deliver the games in the future. That's a very powerful client storytelling platform for us that we're very, very proud of. But it also allowed us to talk about Team Deloitte and our, support of athletes and our support of our talent to pursue multifaceted, goals. So it allows us a very rich, dynamic platform as well.
Our next three guests joined the show to discuss their unique activations and sponsorship deals in emerging spaces. They dove into the world of NIL, the ever-evolving esports space, and a very unique NASCAR event.
Yeah, Car Wash Combos is something we're very proud of, right? It's really our first jump into the NIL space. And so what we did was, we looked at some different opportunities to make sure that we could connect with consumers in a real meaningful and unique way. We didn't feel it was right just to have a student athlete standing outside our car wash next to a shiny car, kind of giving the traditional advertising thumbs up. We wanted to have a little bit more fun, be a little bit more unexpected with the way we approached it. And we really based it off of James Corden's Carpool Karaoke, wonderful series that he created and had out there for a long time. We said, well, what if we matched up student athletes in a car driving through our tunnel? The most exciting part of a car wash is when you're in the tunnel, right? That's when the magic happens. You have the sights and the sounds and the colors and the scents. And what you see when you're kind of going through it, and what I love about this series is you kind of get an honest reaction from the student athletes as they're driving through it. I mean, obviously we have some fun questions laid up to really understand who they are as people, what their personality is like, and who they are as students and student athletes. But you do get the real environment of being in a car wash, which always kind of adds a little bit of interest and excitement to it. So generally what Car Wash Combos is, we have a student athlete host from a university interview another student athlete from that same university, all dressed in their swag at one of our local car washes that are down the street from the schools. And then they just kind of ask a series of fun, interesting, unique questions as they're driving through the Zips car wash tunnel. Just with season 1 of Car Wash Combos, we had 4 million impressions. We had over 2 million video views, which is amazing. The full content of what we had done all together, we had well over 50 million brand impressions, a whole lot more if you kind of get into the media approach in the billions, but then activated almost well over 30 different events locally that our customers could interact with the school in an environment that we helped set up. So season 1 was tremendously successful, but it also, at the end of the day, it helped us improve our sales. It helped us improve our traffic and helped us improve our brand, our overall brand recognition and impression with local consumers. So season 1 was a tremendous success for us.
Esports viewership has continued to grow, like 9% in 2023. I joke that it's not pickleball. The new shiny toy is pickleball. We're all leaning into pickleball, but we have the same issues we had with esports. It's about audience and how do you relate. It's a esports has been something that you played yourself, and how does that relate to you watching other professionals? But people are engaged in gaming and esports on a regular night. And so how those relate to our partners is with still growth in our fan base, we're trying to integrate our partnerships across the entire business. Brand partners like Lexus and Heineken, AT&T have value coming back in multiple verticals, not just esports, and that allows us some flexibility, and they could look really different. We did an amazing a Nate Shot hole-in-one challenge with AT&T, where we put Matt, who's an avid golfer, on a tee box and filmed it and said, we're going to shoot for a day until he gets a hole-in-one. Now, as a gaming and esports organization, like, what are you doing? But look, a lot of our followers and fans and community are not like esports who sit in the basement. Like, they play golf and they're into fashion. And so we drew a huge audience online. He nailed a hole-in-one on his, I think it was his 83rd shot. It was amazing. You forget, like, the guy's a really good golfer.
Must be.
But it's the crossover, right? Is the cultures somewhere between gaming and the NBA is this awesome community of connection where, like, our NBA guys on our roster are probably playing against other esports creators and the like. And so our org is trying to drive value in not just the esports, but the content around them. And we've been really fortunate. Heineken, AT&T, Adidas, we've added a Crocs partnership as well, and just been really fortunate to continue to drive value in different ways. And it's growing. It's fun. It's a really interesting thing to figure out. Our hardest challenge at times is explaining what the business is and where to extract value, because a lot of folks who are great marketers, love the audience, don't know about the audience or don't know how to get to them.
So for us, again, we wanted this to be a racing and entertainment experience. And, the race is our hallmark. It is the focus of the event weekend. We have one on Saturday, one on Sunday. Ultimately, you are going to a race experience, but the location in which we're in, as well as, again, talking about what summertime in Chicago is all about with the festival feel, is we really wanted to lean into that and incorporate some of those components so you have a very well-rounded entertainment experience when you're there. So we have the concerts as well as a lot of different activations and displays. We have our drivers that are going to be participating in a number of different Q&As. We'll have them actually out on the main stage just prior to the Chainsmokers on Saturday night. And so when you look at our strategy, you have that experience. You want to make sure that you're providing something for everybody. And that's from an entertainment perspective, but then also from how they consume the race. And so, we have a broad mix of product offerings, from a general admission ticket, allowing you to walk around the footprint, see the race from different vantage points, to reserve seating. So you still have the ability to walk around, but now you have a dedicated seat that you can watch the race from. And then, there is a demand for the hospitality, those all-inclusive experiences. So we have a couple different hospitality experiences with reserved seats, and then a club right behind, and then our ultra premium Skyline Club, which features suites as well as single admission Founders Club hospitality that will have our partners from RPM Italian and all the Let Us Entertain You venues that will be serving food inside there. So for us, it's really about, again, making sure we have something for everybody, knowing we are in a unique market, and NASCAR will be new to a lot of our attendees. Actually, last year, 85% of our attendees were at their very first NASCAR race. And so, and it was a good mix across all of those different product offerings. And so that's really what our strategy has been. I think last year we learned from a family perspective, making sure that we have opportunities for them to bring the whole family, which led to that youth pricing as well.
Finally, a key topic of discussion for sports sponsorship professionals in 2024 was how exactly to leverage data to judge the success of a sports sponsorship deal. Our final four guests dive into this topic, giving their takes on the early days of sports sponsorship data and analysis techniques.
I know in the book I get into the Jerry Jones stuff, and he came to me and he says, Robert, he just called me Robert. I don't know why. Robert, we're America's team. And I go, how do you know you're America's team? It's not,
We said
I just feel it. I can do a good Jerry imitation. I just feel it. And I go, well, when you just can't feel it and sell it for the money we're asking for. And he gave me the money to do research that proved that he was America's team. He was not maybe the number one team in Atlanta, but he was the number two team in Atlanta. He was not the number one team in Chicago. He was the number two team in Chicago. But he had this huge base, especially in Texas. And this is before the Texans were there and whatever. And he was far and away America's team. I mean, you went into markets, again, before the Ravens in Baltimore, and the Skins, he was number two in Washington, D.C. So you accumulated all that data. And we went in and said, you're sponsoring, in those days, Texas Stadium, but you were sponsoring America's team. We never could have sold that without Jerry. I'll never forget to look, how much do you want for research? I just feel it, Robert. Jerry, it's great that you feel it, but we got to prove it.
I think measurement still today is very linear. And by that, I mean, maybe I'm using the wrong word. That's the word I like to use. And the reason why I say that is because it's very much, we'll measure this piece of it, its valuation, great. Or we'll measure brand awareness or loyalty, great. But the problem is how do all those things come together? I tell clients all the time, okay, if you've got a CEO or you've got your C-level execs all in a room and you're asking them as this sponsorship marketing person on the team, tell me what success means with sponsorship. I guarantee they're each going to give you a different answer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They're going to give you a different answer. And so how can you make everybody at the table happy if you're only measuring one particular thing? So that's how we approach this. We measure as much as we can get our hands on, and then we create a model for clients that actually combines all of those things into a system where now if I've got 6 or 7 or 8 components that are impacting what my scoring looks like or what success actually is for this partnership, I can tell you what's going wrong with that deal. I can literally point to something and say, this is what we have to change next year for us to be successful, which I would say 90% of the industry will go, I'm not exactly sure. I have a feeling of what might be wrong. That promotion didn't go really well. The team didn't really deliver on that thing. They really did well on this thing, but this part we're suffering. And so, but we can actually bring the data from a lot of different perspectives in and say, this is what we do to improve the partnership moving forward.
When we look at our 2 jobs to do, the brand building and business building objectives, when we look at the brand and across all of our key markets, I'm really, really proud of the fact that with our sponsorship properties alone, we are reaching more than 50% of our consumer addressable audience. With respect to our category, we by no means have the deepest pockets, but I really believe in our ability to out-activate not just the competitive set, but other brands. And then when we look at the business side, I mentioned we have 100 plus client experiences that we create in partnership with the lines of business, but we also foster relationships across the business and our partners to establish banking relationships that ultimately deliver millions in revenue directly back to BMO. So we're really able to address both of those objectives within our portfolio of soccer and beyond.
The 2, I guess, underlying questions or issues, if you like, that we observed very early on, because you're right that the notion of first-party data being important and useful is businesses have a long way into that transition, and equally, of course, rights holders seeing the value of their first-party data is nothing new either. What though we observed is that when you activate against that first-party data, that is where the kind of baton was being dropped, if you like, because. And 2 things were happening. One was that these collective sponsors were activating in silos. So, you would have one sponsor doing their own thing, another sponsor doing their own thing. And of course, that created a sort of chaotic environment because there was no supervision. There was no control over what was happening there. And so that in itself, I think, is bad for the fan experience, first of all, because there's no arbiter really in terms of, there's no one looking out for the fan and their experience, across the piece. The other thing, though, that was happening, which was, I think, more of a worry to brands, is that we were pushing each other's prices up, because you'd find that one sponsor was bidding against another sponsor to engage the same fan, which, of course, is counterproductive, and I'm sure not really what the only winner there was the media owner, if you like, and so those are the two thoughts in our mind was, okay, how can we create an environment where there is fairness? And of course, different sponsors have different status. So how fairness and status are considered and respected, but at the same time, where we can eliminate this sort of internal competition that was existing. And of course, at the same time, making sure that the fan experience is curated, because ultimately, I think if you compromise the fan experience, then there are no winners, neither the rights holder or the sponsor themselves.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Ticket Manager All Access interview series. And a big thank you to all of the industry leaders who joined us throughout 2024. We couldn't be more excited for 2025 and all of the engaging conversations to come. From everyone here at Ticket Manager, happy holidays and have a great new year.